Welcome, my lords, to the Well-Earned Comforts podcast. I'm Sam.
And I'm Seth.
Thank you for joining us on the Walls of Isengard as we explore the many works of Tolkien and discuss life. We're glad to have you as part of the fellowship, as there's no telling where we'll be swept off to. And I'm off to a rusty start because it's been so long since we podcast. It's been over a month. We have been very, very busy, both of us. A lot of going on in our lives. Good things, busy things, but we're going to babble like Butterbur, like we always do. So check in with my brother over there, Seth, wearing the Colorado Abs hoodie. What's up? How's it going? Rep it. Yeah,
rep it. They've actually been doing pretty well this year so far as a whole. So I'll take it. But
had some pretty ugly losses, but
they've had some pretty nice wins too. It's just all or nothing for them right now, but they'll get it together. They'll get it together by the end. Life is good, man. It's busy being in school and working. I just finished up my last day of the semester with my clinical group that I was doing for my second job, so that'll free up a little bit of time, which teaching at a nursing home was not the most fun thing to do in the world, but having good students that felt like I could actually teach and cultivate some critical thinking and like the pathophysiology behind things, it was actually a lot of fun. So I'm glad that it's done, but it was also a good experience, so I'm pretty happy with that. But man, just watching Evelyn every day change continually. She's finally starting to walk on her own. She's almost a year and a half, so she's a little bit behind in that area, but the PT said it's because she's so far advanced in all her fine motor skills, and the PT said she is the most cautious kid that I have ever worked with, which that's obviously from Amanda. It's not from me, so I don't know.
You're telling me you're not a cautious guy? You don't like think through all the things you're about to do before you do?
I mean, you remember growing up, right? Like,
oh yeah.
We had a good time, but we were constantly getting hurt, and Evelyn is just incredibly cautious. So she's getting there though. She's learning to walk and trust her body a little bit. The other day she climbed up on a chair, and I knew she was going to fall off, but it was a really small chair that the fall wouldn't hurt her. And so she stood up on the chair, and I just kept my mouth shut, sat by her. I was like, she's going to fall. And you just watched her fall. And then she got this offended look on her face. Like, how dare I fall? And looked at me and then started crying, Dad. And it's like, no, that's what happens. You're trusting your body. Maybe made a little bit of a poor choice, but you have to experience that to learn it. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun, with her being able to grab my finger and walk around now and kind of go explore things. And I'm excited for this winter. I'm going to get it over to the sledding hill and stuff, so it should be a good time.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. How about you guys? Little Baron, I got to see him for a minute before. He's quite expressive with those big eyes.
His eyes, dude, they never shut. I mean, obviously when he's sleeping, but he's just wide-eyed the entire time, wanting to see everything, look at everything. Like he's such a fun little guy. But that also means that he gets bored really easily, and so he gets mad at us if he's not constantly doing something. Like he used to like ride in the car really, really well, but lately it's every time you strap him in, just starts wailing on us. Like we have the little like toys thing hanging down from his car seat. He's got a mirror. He can see himself. He can see us. It doesn't matter. He's just like, get me out of this thing. I need to move around. I need to hang out with somebody. I need to do something. So, it makes it harder to like go places, but other than that, he's been like honestly just a really easy baby. Like,
that's great.
I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I mean, we're getting more sleep now, but also like he doesn't, outside of just like being bored or being hungry, he doesn't cry. He hasn't had any sickness. He hasn't had any like health issues. He's just living life, smiling at us. And I mean, it's so hard. Like, I mean, you know this better than I do probably, especially now with Evelyn being able to like talk a little bit and walk a little bit, but like leaving to go to work when your kid's smiling at you just breaks my heart.
The nice thing is most of the time I leave for work, it's before anybody wakes up, because I have to be at work at 6:30 in the morning. And so normally they're asleep, but on the off time that Evelyn wakes up and Amanda's up with her at 6 or whatever before I leave, it's like I'm always a few minutes late those days, because just like you said, it feels like you're being ripped apart to say goodbye for the day,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, while my shifts aren't as long as yours, I've still noticed, I remember something you mentioned, probably a year ago back when we started this podcast, like you were mentioning you'd go to work, you'd come back, and something different would be like something new she'd either learned or like new expression or
Oh
something. And
yeah.
I'm already seeing that too. And it's just like, man, I'm so glad that I've got a job that I can support our family. I'm glad Ariel can stay home. And I love my job. I love what I get to do, but it is pretty heartbreaking to have to just leave. And I get a lot of good time with them, but
Right.
she's getting the majority of like the really formative moments with them, which is good. They need that together. But
That's part of it
Ariel's
though,
doing really
is
really well.
that's part of it
Yeah,
though,
good.
is you're leaving, but you're leaving knowing that the person you want with your kid is with your kid all day. Like, you're
Absolutely.
gonna have to work
Yeah.
regardless if, you know, Ariel worked or not. You're still gonna be the one that has to
Yeah.
work. So it's like, to structure your life in a way that when you leave, you know that your kid is with your wife, is it, at least for me, it's a very comforting feeling. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
she's gonna be well loved, well taken care of, better than even I could do if I was the one staying at
Yeah.
home. It's like, this is the perfect person to be with my kid all day.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Like that is super nice knowing that I can just leave like with him with his mom and his
Yeah.
favorite person in the world too. So
Well, it'll be that way.
yeah, it'll be that way for a while. But yeah, it's been awesome, dude. It's been such a fun time. Like we were wanting to be parents for a long time, and it happened. God blessed us with just such a joy, and it's a whole different world. Like the responsibility that you take on, and my demeanor has even changed a little bit.
Oh
Just I
yeah.
feel old. I just had my 26th birthday, so I'm on the upper side of my 20s now. So but
Yep.
it's yeah, I'm not a little kid anymore. I'm an adult. I've got a house. I got a kid. I got a marriage. It's
It
like
really puts into
they're just
perspective that you look at mom and dad and you think, man, they must have known everything when we were growing
yeah,
up. Like, as a child, your parents are like gods to you in a way.
sure,
They know everything. And then it just puts perspective. It's like, this is my kid. They're going to think the
mhm,
same thing about me as I'm sitting here going, I guess we'll try to figure this out. I have no idea, one step at a time. Like, I guess we'll figure it
yeah,
out. Whereas she's going to think of growing or grow up thinking, I just know it, you know?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, granted, dad was 40 when he got married, so he had a lot more life experience
That's
than the
true.
two of
That's
us
true.
did
That's
before
true.
we
That's
had
true.
kids. But yeah, it's so good. Yeah. We've been really good though. I mean, other than that, like, we're still trying to be active as much as possible. I graduated, so I'm a college
Yep.
graduate,
Yep. Congrats.
which
That's
is
a huge
cool.
deal.
Yeah. Just a burden lifted. I mean, it doesn't really do anything or change anything for my life. And but it's nice to know that I don't have to do that at least for the foreseeable future and have
Well,
to pay for it too
but
because
at
it's
the
super
same time,
expensive.
it's something that you've worked on part time for many years, that you've, put a lot of time and effort into while you're
Yeah.
moving across the country, having a kid, working full time. I mean, it's something to be
Yeah.
proud of. It's not just it
Sure.
doesn't do anything, whatever. It's no, you set out to complete a quest and you finally threw
Hey,
the ring in the fire. So
wow, that's a good transition. I
it
love
is.
that.
And not to mention, I mean,
Well
school's
done.
kind of like throwing a ring into the fire.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of gold into
A
fire, and
lot
it
of
just
gold
melts
right into the
away.
fire.
You just see it just burn and melt away.
And it's something to be
Oh
proud
man,
of,
that
though.
was yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it is. It is. It's good to be done. But yeah, let's jump into some riddles in the dark real
Oh,
quick.
shoot.
I'm really excited for this episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before that, we're going to jump into riddles in the dark, where we take our 3-in-1 Lord of the Rings copy, flip through a random page, see if we can guess the dialogue, the characters talking, and the context. So I'll go first. I'll
I
get one
forgot
for.
that we were even doing this. I had to find my book.
Jeez,
It's been
somebody's
that
not
long.
prepared. It's all right. It's all right. All right, here we go. I got one for you. Ready?
Oh, geez. All right. I was looking for. All right. Here we go.
All right. Now let us cry. A plague on the stiff necks of elves.
Really? That's what you've got for me?
That's all. That's what I looked at. I'm
All
sorry.
right. That's fine. That's fine. Maybe I'll just not even bother with that one.
You want a new one?
I mean, it's Aragorn talking to Legolas as they're in Lothlorien, and he's saying
All
that
right. Okay.
Legolas needs to be
Okay.
blindfolded. I mean,
All right. Let me do this one then. See if we can get this one. Foolishness. Prudence is one thing, but discourtesy is another. That's a very short
yeah, it is.
sentence.
I
Like I
feel like
could.
it's Gandalf talking to Denethor. but I'm not 100%
No.
sure.
You got the right person.
Yeah,
I'll keep
I know
going.
it's
I am
Gandalf.
old. Yeah, if I say this next line, you're gonna get it. I am old. If I may not lean on my stick as I go, then I will sit.
Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. He's talking to Hama outside of the walls of the gates of Medicel.
Yep. The Golden Hall.
The
indeed.
Golden Hall.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. Well, that was. we might have to go to the Silmarillion soon or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. This is a pretty hard one. It's actually, I think it's a great one, but we'll see what you think here.
Hit me.
I'll even give you who says this, and I want you to.
You don't have to.
Okay. All right. It's pretty challenging one.
Okay.
Do you think you killed him with that apple? Yeah.
Well, so initially, my mind goes to when Aragorn's throwing the apple at Pippin in the movies, but I don't think that part's actually in the books.
No.
So I was like, oh yeah, it's Aragorn. No, that's in the movies. But I'm gonna go with is that Merry talking to Pippin on Treebeard as they're throwing rocks and stuff at the orcs at Isengard. No,
not even close. No.
Okay, well,
I told you it's a hard one.
Okay, tell me who's talking again. I guess.
Right. Do you think you killed him with that apple, Sam? Said Pippin. I'll even give you a little bit more. You'll probably get it with this little bit here. I'm not so hopeful, Mr. Pippin, said Sam, but I'd like to know what became of that poor pony. He's been on my mind many a time, and the wolves howling and all.
I'm trying to. So, okay, did he throw the apple at Gollum then?
No.
Well, because I guess if he's talking about Bill the Pony, then like they let him go right before Moria.
All right, I'll spoil it for you. This one is the reason this one's so challenging is because it is the very end of the book.
Wait, no.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no,
go for it. No. Let's see.
No, I was gonna say, isn't this when they've cleared the scouring of the Shire is happening? They've cleared that out, and is it not Ted? Is it Ted Sandyman he threw the apple at?
No.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
Okay,
whatever.
let me. So it's the end of the book. It's before they go back to the Shire when they're at the Prancing Pony, about to arrive at the Prancing Pony, and Pippin is referencing when they left at the Fellowship. When Sam domed Bill Fernie with the apple on their way out of Bree.
Gosh. That's a ugly look for me. That was an ugly look for me.
That's a hard one though. Like,
man,
that's a good one.
Okay.
Real quick, let's just take a minute to admire the mug Amanda bought me. And then look at the other side here.
Tree of Gondor.
20 ounces of liquid gold in my mouth hole.
What are you drinking with it?
It's actually just coffee with some whole cream, pure fat, with a little bit of local honey that we buy at the farmers market.
Oh, okay. Well, I here am sipping my Papa Bear mug that Mom and Dad got us, and pour over coffee that I made with my new pour over that I got for my birthday.
Okay.
So
it's a little pretentious.
You have a grinder. You grind the beans like this.
You hand grind it.
Hand grind the beans.
So you're regressing in life.
You heat up the water to 205, and then you pour it over, and you just let it do its thing. It tastes so much better that way. I will be honest.
All right. I might have
bitterness
to try
is gone. You get more flavors. If you ever come down, I'll make you some pour over.
I'll gladly enjoy that.
And I'm pairing that with an eclair that Ariel made,
which
is very good. Also, she made some sourdough. So for any of our ASMR people out there.
Yeah.
Didn't work, did it?
Didn't work at all. No. Good try.
All right. Cool. Now, Riddles in the Dark is done. We could probably cut that part out. That was really weird.
Nope.
We decided
in the YouTube video. Facial expressions and all.
Yikes. With my terrible, No Shave November.
Yeah, I wasn't going to point it out, but. Yikes.
one of my volunteers was like, hey man, we need to do No Shave November, and I was like, okay, but then I quickly regretted doing that. So I'm probably gonna shave on Sunday before we go to Colorado on Tuesday.
No, you committed.
But
you
I don't think
committed.
so.
All right.
So for our next segment here, Tidings of the Fellowship, this is the part where we always just check in with our listeners, which we apologize. I mean, it's been obviously very sporadic posting, about once a month, I think is what we're going for here at this point, which is, what we can do, but we definitely love hearing from you guys. You can email us at wecpodcast@gmail.com. We'll read your thoughts on the podcast, but I just figured out how to do the Spotify interactions. So apparently on Spotify, you can like make a comment on each episode, and so we got some comments from a couple different people. So Thomas, I don't know last name or where he's from. I don't think I know him personally. I hope I don't. That'd be awkward if I did and I just didn't know who he was. But Thomas, thank you for listening. I appreciate the comment. I think you were talking about the podcast we did with the frequently asked questions, but you mentioned here about Luthien, which is a really interesting take you've got. So you say, I believe Luthien was brought back as a mortal. She sang for Mandos and moved him, as we talked about in our Baron and Luthien episodes. And he said, my opinion on Tom Bombadil is that he is part of the music. That's interesting. Like, he's not like a being. He's just part of the music. An oddity like Ungoliant. And then he says, great episode. So appreciate the love, Thomas. But yeah, what do you think of that, Seth? Tom Bombadil is a part of the music. Because he sings a lot.
Yeah, I think he's spot on with Luthien coming back as a mortal. Even though Tolkien doesn't really explicitly say what happens to Beren and Luthien in the end, I think it's safe to assume to enjoy Middle-earth for a short period of time. As for Tom Bombadil, I have heard that theory in the past, and it makes sense. It's interesting to me that he ties Tom Bombadil to Ungoliant, which I wonder if he's saying that Ungoliant is part of the music as well, maybe like a how do you phrase this, like the fact that Melkor had all the discord in the music, and maybe she was like an offshoot of the discord, so maybe Tom Bombadil is like an offshoot of the happiness or something, because he's just jolly old Tom. I mean, I don't know, that's interesting. It's an interesting theory. To have to think more about it, but I like it.
No, that's good, very interesting. And then we have another comment from Caleb, I think on the same episode actually. But he said this was a fun episode, so thank you, Caleb. Also, the episode we did with you was a very fun episode.
Yes, indeed.
But I really like what he says here. In an effort to correct damage done by the Rings of Power, we should do an episode on the origins of hobbits.
We could do that.
You mean they weren't these like nomadic traveling little Harfoots that
to some extent they were, but
leave their people behind and
oh man, they put them in the book and then make fun of them after abandoning them on the side of the road,
right? So actually this is interesting. I don't know if you've been keeping up with like the Unexpected podcast, but Lane, one of the hosts of that podcast, he has created an entire TV show really for just the origins of hobbits. Not just the origins of hobbits, but it's a hobbit based TV show, going with like the host of the TV show would be Eleanor, one of Sam's daughters, and kind of goes through her backstory. And the most recent episode, he's got 2 seasons that he's just really thought out, and he's got some dialogue, and he's got seasons, and he's got episodes, and it's really incredible. And so he goes kind of back to the origins of like Bolror took in this last one, and he talks about the fight where golf was invented. And he gives backstory to that. It's really, really, really cool. So, Caleb, I encourage you to look at that one. We might do that eventually, but I'd just point people to that because it's partial fan fiction. It has to be because there's just not a whole lot there, but it's really good.
And I've actually DM'd back and forth with Lane a decent bit about that because I was like, man, this is actually incredible. And with his stories that he is creating, yes, like you said, there's a little bit of fan fiction, and that's okay. And I'm okay with some fan fiction as long as you remain true to the core lore and the core themes of Tolkien's world and universe and the way Tolkien envisioned the whole big picture, which is something that obviously Rings of Power did not do in the slightest.
Right.
But with Lane's version, I mean, listening to the podcasts where he just kind of, it's basically an outline that he gives. Like it's not, you know, a script, but it's an outline for each episode in these seasons. And it's like, man, I'm listening to that going, if you could get that in the hands of like a Peter Jackson or somebody that is willing to kind of say, you know, screw it to all the modern stuff. I'm going to stick to the lore and stick to what's in the outline and then tie it into actually what Tolkien wanted his messaging to be. Then I think, oh man, I would love to watch that. Even though hobbits really are not my favorite, they're kind of dull and boring to me in a way. As a whole, though, I would watch that show in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. But maybe one of these days we'll do like a little like informative podcast on some of the origins of hobbits, of what we know for sure Tolkien wanted for it to be. Not obviously any fan fiction there. But yeah, great comments. Please keep sending them in. I'll figure out how to get on the Spotify interactions. But if you have anything you want to share, like bigger stories that you have or bigger theories you have on anything, really, we'd love to hear from you guys. So make sure to leave a comment on YouTube or send us an email or whatever it is. We'd love to chat. So Seth put in a little thought exercise for this next segment. So we are going to do. We're going to figure out how our companions, our 9 companions of our own making, our own fellowship makeup, would fare in the quest to destroy the ring. And so we each chose 9, and we have a beast of burden as well. So we'll go through and just share our 9 and give some dialogue back and forth. And what I'd love for you guys listening is to actually comment which one you think would be more successful or which one you like better. That way, like, I know I'm going to win. So like, I just need the affirmation, please.
So here's the thing. You can kind of take this in a couple of different ways. Like if we're doing 9 companions to destroy the ring in a quest of secrecy, like in Lord of the Rings, you're going to pick your team or your fellowship far differently than you would if it was like, all right, I'm just going to get the strongest guys. We're going to brute force our way in, which, you know, Elrond says wouldn't even have worked if they would have tried that. So me personally, I kind of went for a little bit of a mix back and forth. So maybe what we'll do is talk about our ring bearer, our Sam figure, our guide, and then we'll go back and forth, and then we can just talk about the rest of the people in the fellowship. So for my ring bearer and my Sam figure, I went back to the First Age, and I have Luthien being my ring bearer. With her magic and her ability to sing and, you know, put people to sleep and stuff. And then Baron's love for her, and not to mention his prowess and just his steadfastness. He really kind of reminds me of Sam, and Baron and Luthien really are just tied at the hip. So I think that's a good combination for the Frodo Sam kind of element, especially if you know, they break away from the rest of the fellowship like happens in Lord of the Rings. And then my Gandalf-like figure or my guide is actually Melian. And that's just good. Because every time she opens her mouth, it's just pure wisdom. She knows what to do in every situation. And quite frankly, her arrogant husband never listens to her. Or Babbling
she could use a break from him anyway. You know, she could use a break from Thingol. She needs a vacation.
Well, I mean, she did get a very long vacation from him after the dwarves decided to slaughter him in his own palace, but
that's a good point.
But Melian is such an incredibly intelligent and character that's just full of wisdom and knows what to do at every turn, and I feel like she'd be a great Gandalf-esque character.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Well, so I don't have necessarily a Sam figure because you don't need one if you have Samwise Gamgee anyway. He's the ring bearer. He is the humble hobbit who is unaffected for the most part from what we've seen by the ring. And I mean, this guy he's steadfast. He's son of Handfast, you know. He's steadfast, and he's gonna have no problem giving up that ring when it comes to it. You know, he's just gonna toss it in the fire, no big deal, and he won't have the drama, and it won't weigh down on him. You know, he'll just throw it in with his spices and his pots and pans, and he'll be good to go. For my guide, I just stuck with Gandalf. I mean, this guy, he knows hobbits, so I want somebody who knows hobbits and can care for them well. And I'm going to go with Gandalf the Gray rather than Gandalf the White. Obviously a little less powerful, but a little bit more, I'd say, fellowship oriented.
Hmm.
Gandalf the
Okay.
White's like, all right, I'm just gonna use this newfound power and I'm gonna start like wreaking havoc and destroy people. That's good, but for our quest, I want Gandalf the Grey, that more fellowship, companion-minded fella. But yeah, that's like I said, I don't really have a Sam figure, but that's my starting lineup
Well, I
to
mean,
start.
you kind of have to pick one, right? If the fellowship's going to split up, you don't want Sam going alone. So who's going to?
All right.
There's actually somebody on your list that would be perfect to
I
go
was
with
gonna say,
Sam.
on my list, I think the one would be Faramir. He'd be
Yes,
my Sam figure.
that's who I
Yeah,
was expecting you to pick.
yeah, he'd be my Sam figure if I had to have one. So
Cool.
yeah,
I like that. All right. So
who else you
uh
got?
the rest I've got, it's kind of an interesting blend here. For a steadfast, very loyal man of integrity, I'm gonna go with Tuor. That's Eärendil's father. He marries Idril Celebrimbor of Gondolin. He's just an awesome character. Then I also picked my two favorite elves of the First Age in Beleg and Mablung. And that's because one is known as the Strongbow and one is known as like the Great Hunter. And between the two of them, if you're looking for stealth in the woods and, obviously Aragorn does a great job in the Fellowship, but these guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to knowing how to get around secretly and surviving in the wilderness.
That's fair. I mean, you got to take into account though that Belleg has a knack for being killed by his best friend. So if
I
Mablong's coming along,
intentionally did not include his best friend though.
well, but if Turin's not a part of the picture, Mablon might just
That's true.
do something bad for him.
That's true. And then I decided to go for a dwarf. I decided to go with Azaghal, who is the
Okay.
king of the dwarves during the Nirnaeth Arnoediad. And it was actually his group of dwarves that pushed back Glaurung and sent him crawling back to the gates of Angband. And he was actually killed by Glaurung, but not before he stabbed him in the belly and caused him to slither away. So I figured he was a good, sturdy figure. And then for my last two, I wasn't too sure, but I thought it'd be pretty good to have Tar Aldarion, who was the sixth king of Numenor. He is the one that was. It's a very interesting story in the Unfinished Tales, the tale of Aldarion and Eärendis. But Aldarion is very friendly to the elves and to Gil-galad and is trying to help them out in their fights against Sauron. He's the one that pretty much established a lot of the Numenorian settlements in Middle-earth. And then to round out my fellowship, I actually tossed in here Ecthelion of the Fountain, who was the...
Yeah, that's an interesting choice.
It's very specific, though. If we're still going through the Mines of Moria, I've got Ecthelion, who slayed Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs.
That's a
in the Fall of
point.
Gondolin.
That is a great
We're getting
point.
across that bridge of Khazad-dûm. I'm not worried about the Balrog. Nothing's getting in the way of Ecthelion. He's taking out the Balrog, piece of cake, and then saying, yeah, I killed Gothmog, your leader, thousands of years ago. You think you're going to stand a chance?
Yeah. Come at me, bro.
Come at me, bro.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll give you that one. Okay, well, I'll share with you what I got here. So
yeah, let's hear it.
My next one is Beorn, the shapeshifter. Obviously, he has no liking for dwarves, but he hates orcs more. So that is good. He is going to be our muscle, really. He's going to get us through pretty much anything, but he can also be pretty stealthy and he can shapeshift into that man figure if he needs to, get by unnoticed, go through towns or cities or whatever. But if worst comes to worst, we need to fight. And
is he staying in bear form most of the time for you?
Only when he needs to, I think. I think it's, you don't want to like waste the muscle or even like make people afraid of him as you're walking through, some of these places. So yeah, so he's gonna be our muscle though. He's like our bouncer. He's gonna get us through wherever we need to go. I got Glorfindel for similar reasons to Ecthelion. He didn't necessarily kill a Balrog. He tried. But
he killed the Balrog. He just died in the process.
Yeah. So, but he came back to life. So, if he does kill the Balrog of Moria, he'll just come back to life later on and join the quest.
I do think he's a good choice too, especially because of why do you think? Third Age specifically.
Well, I mean, he's the guy that like for the Nazguls,
exactly.
like for the Nazguls chasing after our fellowship here. We got to have our own wraith of our own.
Yeah, he can so fight in the wraith world, so that's a solid choice.
Yeah, and then Seth said that this kind of goes against all of what Tolkien stands for. I disagree, because I'm not going to use Thorondor as a beast of burden. I'm going to take the Lord of Eagles as my eyes in the sky. He's not going to carry the whole fellowship. He's not going to do that. He's far too proud, but he will be the guy looking over, giving us a bird's eye view of what's coming ahead of time. If he needs to come down and fight, he can do that. If he needs to save some of our people, take Samwise out of the fight to keep him safe, he can do that. But he's really just going to be our UAV, you know.
All right, so I have a question. When you go through the mines of Moria, is he just saying, "Hey guys, hope you make it. I'll see you on the other side," or is he saying, "Hey, let's fly over the Redhorn Pass"?
Now listen to this. This is going to be great. Tolkien says that he can see through stuff, right? He's got eyes that can see. I don't know about an entire mountain per se.
I think that might be a stretch.
I mean, everything needs a little bit of embellishment, right? Every good story. So we'll just say he's got the vision to see through, to see what's coming for Mines of Moria. But either way, he can wait on the other side, and then also, he'll be waiting in Lothlorien. He'll be telling all the elves, "Hey, be ready to accept this group of people." For my dwarf, I chose Telkar. Now, Seth made a good point. I don't know if he fights, but this is the dwarf that created the dragon helm of Dor Loman, and he created a bunch of other really good things. He's an incredible smith, so he's going to swag us out. Like during this time that we're in Rivendell waiting to kind of go on this quest, he's going to be making us some mithril vests. He's going to making us some incredible helms, knives, daggers, swords. I mean, he's going to be going all out for our team, and we're going to be walking out there swagged and protected. So, but then he'll just be along for the ride as well. To that, I already talked about Faramir, so he's part of that. He's just a good guy. He's a really good guy, pure heart, great fighter. But yeah, could be that perfect Sam figure that Sam needs. We're going to be talking a lot about him in this episode. Fingolfin is my next one, because the dude literally fought Morgoth, and I won't spoil it. We'll talk about what happens, but this guy is fearless. There is nothing stopping him. He's going to charge ahead. He's going to be the leader in any of our battles. That he's just going to be the guy that takes care of the team. And
it's kind of crazy to think that he'll be the leader with everybody you've got on your team, and he would be too.
I know. Yeah, I know.
He's okay. I like it.
But he's also going to be the guy that's going to be. He's going to sacrifice if he needs to. He's going to put his life on the line for the rest of our companions and for the success of the quest. So he's solid choice there. And finally, I have Elros, half elven, brother of Elrond. He's just going to round out the men and the elves in a really good way and create a lot of good synergy within our fellowship. He brings kind of a nobility to him, but he also brings some wisdom. I'm sure he was a great fighter as well. Very, very keen, very steadfast guy.
Then for my beast of burden, it's a little disrespectful now that I think about it. Huan is not a beast of burden. He is the goodest of boys, as we have discussed in previous podcasts. The goodest of boys, but I could not have Baron and Luthien without Huan.
True.
And Bill the Pony had to turn around at Moria's gates, but for a fact Huan's going through there. He's gonna take out that cave troll, no problem.
It's a good point. But would he be willing to carry any of your luggage?
Yeah, that's why I said it's a little disrespectful.
And also, brother, you don't have any cooks on your squad. Like, who's going to be making the food for you?
You're telling me that we're going to run out of lembas bread?
Okay, that sounds boring. Come on.
Melly and taught Galadriel how to make lembas. I think we're set.
But you need some nice crispy bacon from the hobbits there to give you guys that oomph. My beast of burden was Bill the Pony, because the connection he has with Samwise. I think he could probably make it through the mines. I think they were really discounting his abilities. I think with his loyalty and his wisdom for an animal, like he would have gotten through that just fine. And especially with the squad that we had, if Beorn is there to protect him, he'll be good. He'll be good to go.
Fair enough. I like it. All right,
So
I got
yeah,
this.
I
I
was just
got
gonna
this.
say,
I
let
got.
us know.
Let us know what you.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. Let us know what you guys
Okay.
think. Just to give you a summary again, I've got Luthien as my ring bearer. I've got Baron, Melian, Tuor, Beleg, Azagal, Tar Aldarion, Ecthelion, and then Huon. And
And
Sam.
Mablung.
Did I miss Mablung? Dang.
Yeah.
That's because he was so sneaky in the woods. My bad.
Oh, sure.
And then Sam's got Samwise Gamgee as his ring bearer. He's got Gandalf, Beorn, Glorfindel, Thorondor, Telkar, Faramir, Fingolfin, and Elros. And then, of course, Bill the Pony. You can't forget Bill the Pony.
Let us know, guys. Let us know who won. Let us know who you'd rather have taken you to the fires of Mount Doom.
I wonder if we can put up a poll somewhere. That'd be interesting.
I know you can on Spotify, so I'll do that. I'll do that on Spotify.
Put up a poll.
But yeah, I don't know how else we could do that. But yeah, let us know. Whatever that looks like. Just give us a 5-star review on all your platforms, but let us know in that review
who wins that.
Yeah, who wins? So like I mentioned in Meat and Potatoes for today's podcast, we are talking about probably one of the most epic like one-on-one duels in Tolkien's Legendarium.
Oh, it's got to be the most epic.
Yeah, I would say so. There's been a lot of really good ones, but yeah, this is the most epic between the most powerful Valar, Melkor, or Morgoth, and against the High King of the Noldor. That would be my man, Fingolfin. And so we're going to look at the story in the Silmarillion of the battle of combat between the two of them. So I'm going to let Seth jump in with some backstory, as he always does, really, really good, to kind of set the mood, to understand who Fingolfin was and why he decided to take on the most powerful Valar there is.
Yeah, so just like Sam mentioned, to understand the reason for this battle between Morgoth and Fingolfin, you actually have to understand the backstory and who Fingolfin is. Why would Morgoth even come fight him? Who is Fingolfin? Why is he worth a one-on-one duel? And so Fingolfin is actually the second son of Fenway. So he is the half-brother and younger brother to Feanor, the horrible elf that, he just not a good half-brother. Fingolfin was actually described as the strongest and most valiant of the sons of Fenway. So even though at one point I'm pretty sure Tolkien describes Feanor as like none could compete with him. Fingolfin is actually, the strongest and most valiant. So when it comes to arms and prowess in battle, Fingolfin takes the cake. At one point in Valinor, Feanor actually, these names are so hard to keep straight when you talk about them. In Valinor, Feanor actually ended up threatening his half-brother Fingolfin. And at this time, Feanor was claiming that Fingolfin was trying to steal his place as, the son to the High King of the Noldor, who was Fenway at the time. And they kind of face off a little bit, and Fingolfin actually says, "I'm not trying to challenge you. Like, you have the princedom, I guess it would be called. But let's just leave it at that." And Feanor drew a sword and like held it up against him, and actually led to him
the first time, right?
Yeah, for the first time in, what was that place called? It was in Valinor. I forget the city's name, but it was the first time anybody had drawn sword, and so it led to Feanor becoming banished from that city. That Vinyamar, maybe, I don't remember.
That sounds right.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I'll have to look it up afterwards. But it led to him becoming banished, and that led to Fenway leaving to go be with his son. And long story short, that's when Morgoth, around that time, poisoned the mind of Feanor, ended up stealing the Silmaril, fleeing to Middle-earth. And so even though Fingolfin didn't really want to follow Feanor to Middle-earth, he decided he was going to, because he really did not want to abandon his people, because at this point he's still a prince of the Noldor. He still is, a leader amongst these elves, and most of them are going to go follow Feanor, and he doesn't really trust Feanor anymore. He doesn't trust his half-brother, which, as we'll see here in a second, is very reasonable. And so he decides to follow, and they cross the Helcaraxe, or they're beginning to, and Feanor actually decides to take his 7 sons. They jump on a boat and they sail right across, they sail east to Middle Earth. And I forget which son it is. I want to say it's Maethros. But he looks at Fingolf or at Feanor and says, all right, awesome. Who are we, like, what boats and what men are we sending back to start getting shepherding the rest of our group over? And Feanor actually just laughs, and I'll quote him directly. He's sadistic, really. This is his half brother. It's a lot of his kin. It's everybody that he convinced to follow him. And Feanor laughs and goes, none. What I have left now. Wait, let me say that again. None. What I have left behind, I count now no loss. Needless baggage on the road it has proved. Let those that cursed my name curse me still and wind their way back to the cages of the Valar. Let the ships burn.
That's insane.
It's insane. So he basically is just committing everybody to pretty much death. I mean, a lot of them make it, but a lot of them do die as they cross the Helcaraxe. Yeah. And so at this point, Fingolfin basically just takes over the leadership of the remaining elves. So he's not technically the High King anymore, or he isn't up until this point. It's still Feanor, but he takes leadership of everybody else. And so at this point, they arrive, in Middle Earth, and there's a lot going on. But Maethros actually gets captured by Morgoth and chained to the mountain, which we talked about how Thorondor came with Fingolfin, and Fingolfin actually cut his arm off basically to rescue him. And so there's a great brotherhood that started to bond between, I guess it'd technically be like his nephew, right? So it'd be Fingolfin and Maethros. And so at this point, Feanor has already died, and Maethros looks at Fingolfin and says, I relinquish my crown. You should be the High King of the Noldor, and it shouldn't go to any of my brothers. If I die, it should go down your line, which is where Gil-galad eventually comes from. And so this establishes Fingolfin as the High King of the Noldor within Beleriand. And at a certain point in the first age, in the year 60, they had the Dagor Arglareb, or the Glorious Battle, in which they created the Siege of Angband. They pushed back all of Morgoth's forces, and they created this siege that lasted for nearly 400 years. And unfortunately, that's when the Dagor Bragollach came into play, the Battle of Sudden Flame. This is the one that Azaghal died in, that I was talking about earlier, in which the Siege of Angband was broken, and Morgoth released fire, just destroying all the nearby land. And Tolkien describes it as, he's describing this battle, and he says, then suddenly Morgoth set forth great rivers of flame that ran down swifter than the Balrogs from Thangorodrim, and poured over all the plain. And the mountains of iron belched forth fires of many poisonous hues, and the fume of them stank upon the air, and it was deadly. And so you can imagine, that's just...
It's a cheat code.
Ooh, out of nowhere, you're not really expecting it. You've been biding your time for 400 years. The elves that are, doing the siege are probably a little lax, we got them trapped, no big deal. And then that comes out. So
do you think sorry to interrupt you, do you think this is, I don't know my history well enough, were flamethrowers a World War I or World War II thing? I feel like they came up, I think they came like the end of World War I, and it was very surprising for a lot of people. I wonder if this is kind of like something he might have seen in battle, where it just like rivers of fire, where it just lights up everything in front of it. Just sudden flame. I mean,
it's definitely completely possible. Wrong, I know they were used heavily in World War II. I know that for a fact, but I don't know when they originated. But if they were, man, could you imagine going across the no man's land in World War II or World War I between the trenches, carrying a bomb on your back, knowing that one bullet hits that thing and you and everybody around you is just going to get evaporated?
Explode. Yeah,
man, that'd be terrifying.
It's so crazy. Yeah,
maybe. I don't really know.
I just thought, because I know a lot of his imagery, especially when it comes to battle, comes from his experience. And I like to put myself in his shoes, not for very long because it's scary, but just to kind of be like, wow, what did this guy go through? And how did he, I mean, he's so brilliant the way that he creates his battle plans, and he creates the combat that we see. Because it's real. It's so realistic in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah. And that'd be an interesting connection. I'll have to look that up, because now that you mention it, that description is kind of what I would imagine a flamethrower out of nowhere you know, it smells bad,
Sure,
just comes out
sure.
of nowhere. Man, that's an interesting connection. We'll have to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the front of these forces, after this fire comes out and just, you know, destroys everything in front, then Morgoth released his forces, and at the front of that came Glaurung, and in his train were Balrogs, and behind them came armies of orcs in multitudes such as had not been seen before. So obviously Morgoth had been planning this for a long time. And it was
Yeah.
actually in this battle that two of Galadriel's brothers, Angrod and Agnor, I have a hard time pronouncing Agnor, were killed. And so at this point, this is also where Barahir rescued Finrod Felagund, which we know plays a huge role in the story of Beren and Luthien.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can just imagine the destruction that's happening and kind of the despair. Like, we thought we finally had Morgoth trapped and we were going to be able to, you know, move on and just keep him there. And then just all of this happens, and it's got to be just incredibly difficult on the psyche.
Yeah.
But I thought this was kind of a little fun tidbit that ties in here, and it's a little bit of lore here. Maedhros did deeds of surpassing valor, and this is Maedhros with one hand, the son of Feanor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And orcs fled before his face, for since his torment upon the Thangorodrim, his spirit burned like white fire within, and he was as one that returns from the dead. Thus a great fortress upon the hill of Hemring could not be taken. So this was a hill that Maedhros was in charge of. That's where his remnant of the Noldor that followed him hung out, at this hill of Hemring. And what's fascinating is at the end of the First Age, when Beleriand falls into the sea, that little hill, if you look at a map of Middle Earth, in the top, like the northwest corner of the map, there's actually a little island off the northwest coast, and it's called Hemring. And so for some reason, I don't really know why, but Tolkien decided that even though Beleriand was falling into the sea and the world was, you know, being reshaped in a way, he kept that little remembrance of Maedhros. So not all of Feanor's sons were horrible.
Yeah, Maedhros is he does some deeds of valor. But again, back to the Noldor of the North, and they're in Hithlum, and they're scattered. I mean, again, you think about what just went down, the despair of the Battle of Sudden Flame. We got some people in Doriath. We have some people on fortresses by the sea. Some of them went to Nargothrond, and then even some went as far as the reaches of Assyrian. So, I mean, they're just scattered everywhere. And again, you think of like, okay, Fingolfin is supposed to be the High King of these Noldor. I mean, how can he be king? How can he rally his troops when they're so far away?
Yep.
But the news of Dorthonion falling and the death of his nephews, along with the sons of Feanor being pushed back, Fingolfin's, he beheld the utter ruin of the Noldor and the defeat beyond the Red Dress. He's like, okay, I got to do something about like this. He's just start thinking, there's so much going on here. What do I have in me to change this, to counteract what Morgoth has done? And so he's been filled with wrath and despair. He mounts his horse, Rock'alar. Is that how you'd say it?
I have no idea.
Rock'alar.
Rock'alar.
Yeah. Anyway, he gets on his horse and he rode alone to the gates of Angband. Because again, everyone's scattered. He can't be like, all right, guys, come on with me. Let's go together. He's just like, I gotta do this. It's up to me. Everything is on my shoulders now. And he rides alone to Angband. And this is an excerpt. Is this an excerpt from both of them from the Lay of Luthien, or just from the Silmarillion? And then
I'm not too sure. I think the first one might be from the Silmarillion, and then the second one from the Lay of Luthien. I don't remember.
Gotcha. So yeah, the first excerpt is, we're pretty sure, is from the Silmarillion, and then we got another one from the Lay of Luthien here. But this is kind of describing how he was approaching Angband. It says this: all that beheld his onset fled in amaze, thinking that Orome, the Valor himself, has come with a great madness of rage upon him, so that his eyes shone like the eyes of the Valar. Again, this is just he's a high elf, but he's just an elf. And here he is, like, everybody's looking on him amazed, thinking, okay, this guy's like, he's legit. He is absolutely legit.
You know what I find interesting, and I could be wrong about this, but the only other time in all of the Legendarium that makes the connection of like that, thinking that Orome himself was coming, is not thinking that Orome was coming necessarily, but it's in the Ride of the Rohirrim. Tolkien actually references Theoden, and he says something as in like Theoden charged like the Vala Orome when the world was young, and so he's comparing Theoden to Orome, and so it's a very rare thing that somebody gets compared to him, and so I don't know, just an interesting tie-in, and it definitely shows just how intense and powerful Fingolfin is.
Yeah, and we know how epic that whole scene is with the Ride of the Rohirrim. To get that kind of description, I mean, you can put yourself, just think of that, but without, thousands of horse riders
just him alone.
Him alone, he's going to do this. And from the Lay of Luthien, which is a really long, I guess you could say, poem, right? That Tolkien wrote specifically about Luthien, but or Lathian, I guess is the term. But this is how he wrote it. Again, kind of a description of what's going on. In the vast shadow once of yore, Fingolfin stood, his shield he bore, with field of heaven's blue and star of crystal shining pale afar. In overmastering wrath and hate, desperate he smote upon the gate. That's the gate of Angband. The gnomish king, we'll explain that here in a second, there standing lone, while endless fortresses of stone engulfed the thin, clear, ringing keen of silver horn and baldric green. So I love, I mean, read the Lay of Luthien. It's beautiful. Like it flows so well. Like it's a story, but it rhymes and it's really, really, really beautiful. But specifically here, he's talking about Fingolfin and his majesty as he's coming to the gates of Angband. And obviously this was like one of the first writings that Tolkien did. And he actually called elves gnomes before. So that's why it's like the gnomish king. And I'm glad he just decided to go with elves instead of having gnomes as a thing. I mean, because we think of gnomes nowadays, you think like the Smurfs or something like that, little tiny guys with a beard and a cone-shaped hat.
Where you don't see their
eyes. That's not at all. Yeah, you don't see their eyes. But that's not at all what Tolkien had in mind when he thought of like gnomes originally. It was more so, again, what we see with the elves. So, but yeah, it's a beautiful description. We've got one of the most determined moments we've ever seen any of the High King. Again, you think of elves, they don't do rash things, right? No. They sit and they wait and they're patient. Fingolfin's like, nah, we got to do this. We got to do this now. And I'm going to be the one to do it.
Yeah. So if you think about just the amount of despair that he felt when the Dagor Bragollach happened and everything that he had known, for 400 years, they had relative peace while they were sieging Angband. And now Morgoth's out. They've seen the dragons. They've seen the Balrogs. They've seen how many orcs he made. They know how powerful Morgoth is alone. And he's just, he has pure despair. Like there's nothing we can do to defeat this. And he knows that he's just an incredibly mighty and powerful elf in his own right. And he's like, all right, let's just see if we can challenge him in one-to-one combat, which is interesting. You see that in books and movies all the time where it's like, well, if you were a man, you wouldn't fight me. You wouldn't send all your lackeys to fight me. You'd fight me one-on-one. And it's like I don't know, kind of a pathetic challenge, really. It's like some hero that is at his wit's end knowing that he's going to die because he's way outnumbered and he tries to just cut the head off the snake. It's kind of a lazy type of writing or storytelling in a lot of ways. But
play to the pride.
Yeah, which in reality, nobody's really going to do. But he knows Morgoth. And in this case, it actually works out pretty well. And so Tolkien says that he stood before the gates and just like Sam read, he banged on the gates and challenged Morgoth and just yelled to try to get him to come fight. And Tolkien actually says, speaking of Morgoth, he says, he took not the challenge willingly. Alone of the Valar, he knew fear. So why do you think that is, Sam? Like, he alone of the Valar knew fear. So that means that Manwë, who's just as powerful or close to as powerful, and all the rest of the Valar, they're not scared. They're never scared of him. I mean, Tolkas laughs in his face, right? Like, why is it that of everybody, why is Morgoth the one that knows fear?
That's a good question. I mean, you know me and my pastor brain, I'm going to take everything kind of from a biblical lens and just what we see in scripture. But I think when you have separated yourself from the creator, you're going to be filled with fear because you have no certainty. You have no faith. You have no hope in anything. And so while he is turned his back on God, if you will, Iluvatar, he knows for one, he's not as strong as Iluvatar, and he knows for two, like without the presence of Iluvatar in his life, he knows like he can never be the sole being of power. He can never he can never be confident in his abilities that nobody else can withstand him because he doesn't have, I guess, the confidence, the hope that the other Valar do standing next to God, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. That makes perfect sense, but at the same time, in my brain, it's like, so why did he cause the discord in the first place? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't have fear prior, and
Sure.
when that cleavage happened, that's when he went, "Oh, geez, I'm scared. I have fear. I can feel this fear." So maybe that's why. But in my mind, it's like, why would you?
Well,
if you were
again,
gonna feel that, why would you test fate?
I think it's the temptation of going your own way, of getting something more than what you've been given. I mean, again, to just be very biblical here, you look at the story of the fall. Adam and Eve were perfectly happy in the garden. They were tempted by Satan to do something that God told them they knew they shouldn't do. They knew they shouldn't go against God, but they were said they could be like God, and that was intriguing to them. In the same way, I think Melkor felt like he could be like Iluvatar if he created himself. And but the first thing that happens when Adam and Eve bite the apple is they realize they're not only are they naked, but then the Bible says, and they were afraid. That was the first reaction, is they were afraid. Because again, they have this disconnect. God is no longer overwhelming presence, so they don't feel safe anymore. They realize, okay, there's good and evil in this world. I may be on the wrong side of it.
Interesting. That's a good tie-in. I'll have to think about that. I think you might be spot on though. I like that. Thanks for sharing that.
I could preach for a little while.
I bet. You're good at it.
Thanks.
So getting back to the story here, just picture this elf. He's got, Ringil, his sword. He's got Rockalor, or is that how he said it? Ronchlor? I don't know. His horse, and it's just his shield, his sword, his horse, and his fury. And he's banging on the doors of Angband. And at this point, Tolkien, I'll read a couple of different little excerpts here on just the approach of Morgoth. And it says, the rumor of his feet was like thunder underground, and he issued forth clad in black armor. He stood before the king like a tower, iron crowned, and his vast shield, sable unblazoned, cast a shadow over him like a storm cloud. So just the size of Morgoth's shield is completely shielding, it's casting such a shadow over Fingolfin like a storm cloud. It just blacks out the sun or whatever, just his shield alone.
Yeah.
And then Tolkien says, but Fingolfin gleamed beneath it as a star, for his mail was overlaid with silver, and his blue shield was set with crystals, and he drew his sword Ringil that glittered like ice. And then the battle commenced, and Morgoth's weapon, as we know about from the Third Age, is actually the what is it called? A battering ram that destroys the gates of Minas Tirith. It's actually created in reverence of this weapon that Morgoth is wielding, and that's Grant, the hammer of the underworld. And so, like I said, in the Third Age, that's what destroys the gates of Minas Tirith, and it was equipped with spells of ruin, is how Tolkien describes it in the Third Age. So it's the hammer is well known, like this weapon that Morgoth is swinging and using as his main weapon here, like it goes on through the ages. It lives in infamy. And so at this point, he kept swinging down at Fingolfin, but Fingolfin, I just imagine he's like a fourth of the size of Morgoth, but he's quick and he's strong. And every time Morgoth goes to swing, he dodges it. He rolls back and forth and gets out of the way. However, Grond is such a powerful weapon that he's actually creating craters in the ground. Everywhere that Grond lands, it's creating a crater. And Tolkien says that many times Morgoth attempted to catch Fingolfin, but the king was too quick.
Yeah, he's got an agility rating of 10, 10 out of 10. He's leaping back and forth. And to use that analogy, like you mentioned, of like Tolkien's description, Morgoth's this dark cloud. His shield casts over a dark cloud. But Tolkien also contrasts that with Fingolfin. He says Fingolfin leaped away from the blows as a lightning shoots from under a dark cloud. So again, I love how he just keeps the description,
Yeah.
like the detailed description. Like I can just see this in my brain, like exactly what he's talking about, like how fast lightning is on a dark cloud. Because you got Morgoth looming over him. It looks bleak. It looks dark. It looks terrifying. And then you just see a flash of lightning, and it's gone. And that's how quickly Fingolfin was running around during this battle, and he was able to be pretty successful doing this. He actually struck Morgoth 7 times, and I mean, I assume it's just like quick little slices and jabs here and there, so not like any like completely damaging blows, but it was enough to make Morgoth cry out in anguish every single time. And Tolkien even says in the Silmarillion that the hosts of Angband, they fell on their faces in dismay. So they're thinking, shoot, man, this leader of ours, maybe he's in trouble. Like maybe this is not the guy we thought he was.
Yeah,
like,
they're hearing him getting his butt kicked.
Yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, we hear him cry out because again, like with just his size alone, you can imagine his voice crying out in anguish would definitely dismay his people. So things seem to be going well for the king. He's doing really well. He's quicker than Morgoth. He's getting in his jabs, but because of how much energy he's spending doing this, he quickly grew weary. I can imagine, running back and forth and just doing things really, really fast. And at one point, I kind of imagine, he maybe got a jab in and steps back, trying to catch his breath, and that's when Morgoth takes advantage of the moment. And so Tolkien says 3 times Morgoth brought down the hammer of Grond onto the shield of Fingolfin, and it says 3 times he blocked the blow and stood up. And then he catches his breath, Morgoth comes in again, boom, blocks the blow, stands up the 3rd time, and Tolkien says that his shield actually broke the 3rd time. And so he stands up after the 3rd time. Shield is completely broken, and Fingolfin, as tired as he is, he's not ready to quit. He stands steadfast, looking at Morgoth like, all right, man, let's finish this. Yeah. I'm gonna take you down. Like I've already gotten some good blows in. I'm not done. Let's finish this. Unfortunately, what Seth said about Grond making craters in the earth, the ground is completely uneven, there's holes everywhere. I kind of imagine like Fingolfin tries to get in a really steady stance, ready to maybe push off his back leg to get another good quick stab in, but he slips. He stumbles on the uneven floor and he falls because of one of the craters. And at this, Morgoth quickly took advantage of such an unfortunate event. I mean, think about it, like of all the ways to go down, you slip, you fall.
Yeah.
But Morgoth takes advantage of this. He's like, all right, I'll take advantage. So he steps on him with his left foot. He steps on his neck. And Tolkien says the weight was just unbearable. But in one last ditch, Fingolfin takes up his sword, Ringling, and he hews at Morgoth's foot as hard as he can. He doesn't necessarily cut the foot off, but blood gushes from Morgoth's foot. And Tolkien said the pits of Grond that were completely filled with smoke and blood, and again Morgoth crying aloud, this cry of anguish. However, the weight of Morgoth's foot was just too much for our High King of the Noldor. And I mean, you think about it, you got a giant's foot on your neck. It's gonna do it for you. So Tolkien says this: thus died Fingolfin, High King of the Noldor, most proud and valiant of the elven kings of old. But get this, the orcs made no boast of that duel at the gate. Neither did the elves sing of it, for their sorrow is too deep.
Man.
So our guy, Fingolfin, like I said, he's in my fellowship. He is going to take on whoever without fear, even if it means he's going to lay down his life in the process.
Yeah.
And he did.
Man. And to think that he took on, I mean, all the Valar had to work together to take on Morgoth, right? And here's a High King of the elves, and he almost gets him. I mean, maybe not almost, like it was never really going to happen, but he wounded him multiple times and created, and it, let's see if it's, I don't know if we put it in here, but he never set forth outside of Angband again. Morgoth didn't. And so he was basically like, no, never again. Like, and as we talked about earlier, he's the only one to have known fear. And so even though he killed Fingolfin and knew a little bit of fear going into it, imagine like his ego in a way.
Yeah.
Like, oh shoot, like I'm crippled now. I hurt. It'll never go away. And I'm never stepping foot, to fight again. I'm going to have all my minions do it for me.
Yeah, he realizes his mortality and is like, I mean, even though he's like an immortal being, at least on Middle Earth, he's like, okay, this
Yeah.
body of mine can be
Yeah.
cut and bleeding and broken. Yeah.
And if you think about it too, if you remember back to our read through of Children of Hurin actually cries out after isn't it after is it after Lalaith dies from the disease from Angband, and he cries out, he's playing his harp and stuff, and he like cries out, he says like, I will mar you as my lord Fingolfin did.
Yeah.
And this is what he's referencing. He's basically saying, I wish that I could hurt you in the same way that Fingolfin did. And Fingolfin obviously did a number, but he didn't make it. So at this point, unfortunately, Morgoth takes the body of Fingolfin, and Tolkien says he broke it. I don't really know what that means, but you can just imagine just getting snapped in two or whatever. And he was about to throw.
Pretty gruesome.
Yeah, just a gruesome. It's not like, hey, it was a good fight, he's dead, we'll honor him for the pride and the prowess that he had. No, he's breaking him, and he's about to throw him to the wolves. And another member of Sam's fellowship comes sweeping in here. Thorondor, the king of eagles, actually bores down upon Morgoth, and Tolkien says that he marred his face. So I can just imagine scratching, with his massive claws on Morgoth, and he was able to get him to drop Fingolfin's body, and he swoops him up, and he flies him to the mountaintop of the Echoriad, which is overlooking Gondolin on the north side of the encircling mountains. So the Crissaegrim is south, and that's where Hurin and his brother were found, right? But this is the north side, and I think the reason he takes him there is, one, it's near his eyries, or however you say that word. Eyres and the Crissaegrim, but also his son, who is now the High King of the Noldor, is Turgon of Gondolin. And so he drops him off on the mountain range, and Turgon actually goes up there and creates a what's that word that Tolkien uses for it? I'd never
cairn.
A cairn, yeah. I never heard that word until reading this.
It's like the little rocks you build on a trail.
I always thought that was like Karen, like short haircut, annoying lady. Oh, that makes so much more sense.
No,
I always wondered why it was called that. Okay. So you're talking about like marking the trail with like the rock piles, like when you hike a 14er.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's Karen.
The more you know. Anyway, so Turgon actually goes and builds a cairn over his father, and that's where his resting place is. And what's kind of actually really sad is Rockjalor or Ranklor, however you say it, his trusty horse, stayed with him until the very end. You think of horses, they get spooked pretty easily, they take off running. Yep. No, he stayed right by Fingolfin during the whole battle, and then as soon as Fingolfin died, he took off and ran away. And Tolkien says that the wolves of Angband chased him, but he was too swift and he outran them, and he arrived in Hithlum, which is Fingolfin's, it was where he reigned from. He arrived there, and then he died of a broken heart. He ran away. He was not going to be eaten by the wolves, but as soon as he got to Hithlum, he passed.
Yeah, there's no companion anymore for him. Wow, that's sad.
He loved Fingolfin that much. And so, kind of like I mentioned, Turgon created this cairn that I now learned the word. That's fantastic. The more you know. He created that, and Tolkien says that the orcs would never cross over that because they feared the wrath of Fingolfin. Even though he was dead, they saw, the pyre, whatever, not really a pyre, but the monument to him, and they just didn't want to mess with it. They did not want anything to do with that. And pretty much from that day on, Morgoth was scared of Thorondor, and he also walked with a limp, and the pain from his wounds never went away, and they never healed. So I don't know how that works, that they never healed, but it really is just a testament to Fingolfin and the damage he truly did to Morgoth, the strongest of all the Valar.
Yeah, it's interesting how Tolkien, like, he could have written this duel, this combat in many different ways. He could have had people helping, helping the king out. He could have had Angband, like Morgoth, send his Balrogs or whatever, but he really let this play out, and I think it's really cool that we get to have a front row seat to just such an epic battle. And I love how he pays so much tribute to his heroes. And I mean, he lets people die. We don't really see that as much in Lord of the Rings. That's, I think, some of the gripe that people have, especially I think it was J.R.R. Martin George R.R. Martin who wrote I can't even think of it right now.
Game of Thrones,
Game of Thrones, yeah. He was like, oh, like nobody dies, and so you need to kill people.
That's because Boromir dying in the Fellowship was tenfold whatever that guy could have imagined with his characters dying. Yeah. Like when you lose one of Tolkien's characters, it's not just, oh, cool, that was a shock, and wow, how could they kill him off? No, you feel it on the core of your being because of how Tolkien relates it to just the way you read the story. He brings it all together in a way that is so beautiful that it hurts when one of his characters dies.
Yeah, and you absolutely see that here with Fingolfin too. Even if it's a guy that you don't have much of a tie to, you don't have a whole lot of a story to, like you can even just pick up the Silmarillion and read that battle and then be like, oh my gosh, like dang, like it hurts. It's there's so much depth to it, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, great story. Really fun to dive deep into it and read it through again. And you got to think too, like you said, Morgoth never healed from his wounds, and he never came out of Angband after that point. So this was an incredibly pivotal moment, like moving forward in the story of the Silmarillion, because if he never once had the confidence to step out of Angband again, how much good did that do for our allies? How much good did that do for the heroes of the story who, didn't have to worry about Morgoth coming out with all his force and his hammer grond and wrecking havoc, because he was scared now. He was afraid. He was beaten up. He was battered, and he didn't ever come out of Angband again.
Yeah.
Pretty cool stuff. Thank you so much for enlightening me on some things here in this story, Seth. And I'm glad I could tell you what a Karen was.
Yes, that is 30 years in life, and many times looking at those things going, why did they name them after some short-haired lady that yells at restaurant servers? Like, it all makes sense now.
That's good. It all makes sense now. Yep. That's so good. Well, guys, it's been fun. It's been a long time since we podcast, but it's been a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing this. We'll try to be a bit more consistent now that I don't have school. Seth's got a little bit more time back, a little bit now, probably not a whole lot, but we'll do what we can. If you have any suggestions for episodes, if you want us to talk about something, like, let us know, and we'll see if we can put it together. But until then, you know what time it is. It is time to call for aid. We are going to call for aid as Gondor, and we're going to break into halls of Mediceld and shout, Gondor calls for aid. Will you, Rohan, answer? So if you enjoyed the podcast, please light a beacon of your own by sharing it with your fellow friends and fans. And obviously, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, send us an email, check out the YouTube videos, all that good stuff. We'd love to hear your Tolkien story as well. We'll share that on the podcast, read it out here as well. But guys, we are so thankful that you chose to join us for this journey and this well-earned comforts. But until our next journey, we bid you a very fond farewell.
Nicely done.
Welcome, my lords, to the walls of Isengard. Wait, what? I just blanked on everything I was supposed to say.
Question marks.
That's not it at all.
You know the the GIF I'm talking about. Yeah. We're not welcoming you to the walls of Isengard. We're welcoming you to the podcast that is on the walls of Isengard. Okay. That's it. Try again. Well, yeah.